Good evening, Holliston. Happy New Year. Welcome to the January 12th meeting of the Holliston Select Board. We have some updates to bring forward to the community, and we're going to start tonight by talking to the Historical Commission. We have two members here this evening. If they could come on up if they're prepared to and sit by the microphones. We have Sarah Zarelli and Frank Chamberlain. Welcome, welcome. Happy New Year. Thank you for coming in.
Yep. Happy New Year to you as well.
And so we brought you in. We wanted to sort of talk a little bit more about the wonderful report we got about the historical buildings in town, the census, and wanted to talk a little bit about, have more of a discussion with everybody. So please, board, just don't wait for the moment. You just let's just start talking. We want to review and accept the final report, so I want to go through that a little bit. We want to sort of discuss what are the next steps to take with this. And one of the things that I had been talking about offline and other places, and I think is something that we should talk about a little bit here, is how this historical census and history in general relates to our master plan and some of the things and the changes that are coming in Holliston, such as sewers, such as high school, like different kinds of things that are happening, and how we can sort of bring these things together a little bit more holistically. So wanted to sort of kick it off with just like if we could kind of just give the quick overview of the report again, just to talk it through, like what do we talk about, just to set the stage for things. And again, like Tina and Damon, if you guys have questions, let's just let's talk. We don't need to wait for a timing, and then we can kind of get moving on to other pieces of it. So however you want to handle it, you two.
Sure. Sure. Okay. So I'm happy to open it up here.
Okay.
So the report that we've put before you again tonight is from our historic preservation consultant, Stacy Spies. We were able to hire her thanks to a grant from the Massachusetts Historical Commission, which was matched by the town of Holliston.
Is she still, do we still have more on the grant, or is she completed the task?
She has completed it.
Okay.
She's indicated that she's open to potentially working with us again in the future.
Okay.
But we've finished the work outlined in our grant, and we've spent all the money.
Yes,
so.
and we have all the information from that. So like if
Yes.
we wanted, I'm not saying we would, but if we wanted to engage with someone else about some similar topics, we have all that information.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a final report which I shared with you that will be also on file with the State Historical Commission as well. So it's a public document. It will be publicly accessible. The full paper copies are available to anyone here, and they will be online in the state database. It just takes them a little time to migrate them. So they are coming, and they'll be publicly accessible.
Okay.
Our real purpose for this work was twofold. First of all, the Village Commercial District is not well documented at all. We don't know much about it, but it contains some interesting buildings, and it's also a place that, as you alluded to, Ben, might see some big change going forward if the town successfully moves forward with sewers. So we wanted to document the area so that if we were asked as the commission to rule on demolition delays, we could really understand how the buildings fit into the area, what the character was like, and really kind of know what we were dealing with from what had previously been an area that we didn't really understand very well. So we documented just a little over 100 properties through Stacy, and that is summarized in the report. And then each of the forms, each property has its own what we would call a B form. This is a nomenclature set by the State Historic Commission that has a whole library of forms. I believe it's A through H that are different kinds of ways to document historic places, buildings, structures, objects, rocks, lands, neighborhoods, a whole gamut of things. And
We
so
laugh about rocks, but I'm sure there are.
there definitely are.
Well, balancing rock.
Yeah, I was like, well,
When it was a balancing rock.
With a balance.
Holliston has a few rocks.
Jasper's Rock, right? Right up here?
Yeah.
Well, there's also Jasper's Rock,
Yeah.
Okay.
and then there's also the rock pile on the golf course. So that's
Wow.
three significant rocks I can think of right off the top of my head, so, without even talking about it.
I know, she's already come up with three.
We go
Yeah.
into the
Welcome to
thumping
Holliston Show.
So,
Yeah.
It rocks.
yeah,
Literally.
yeah. Asked the wrong place. Sorry.
Love it. Okay. So all right, so, we have this document that has all this wonderful census about the buildings in the Village Commercial District. And so, we wanted to, there's sort of an expanded thing to that, but I think we should just, let's just sort of talk specifically about the report and sort of like, I know Tina, like, I think you had expressed before, like, an interest in accepting it, promoting it from our position, and just curious if you still feel that way, have anything to add to that?
Definitely. I see three distinct areas here that this report is significant towards. One is funding. I think that this report can be a resource for those seeking CPC funding. I think that the report can be a document that people, groups, organizations, efforts here in Holliston can use to support a funding request at a state or federal level. And I'm particularly thinking about something like a cultural district or historic district. Not to say that today that's the direction the town wants to move in, but this becomes a critical piece to any kind of application for those, which comes with funding.
Absolutely.
And then also, again, coming back to CPC, I think that this document will serve those that might be coming to CPC to ask for funding. So I see it supporting funding requests. I see it supporting opportunities like, for example, outreach to the residents who own the homes that were identified as being, there were 4, I believe, potentially qualifying for the National Historic.
National Register of Historic
Right.
Places.
Thank you. So I think at a minimum, we accept the report and then would look to direct town resources to do some outreach to those individuals to support. And then maybe that pulls in CPC, maybe it doesn't, but.
It has the potential to.
Okay. I think in accepting it, we open the door for that. And then I think of process for the town, particularly zoning bylaws, demolition delays, as you mentioned. I think that this report will guide some processes that are currently established and then will be established or will change as we look to, as we increase our efforts and focus in the downtown area, whether it be sewer or some other effort. So I see those as 3 key areas as to why this board should accept it, and then we should get it up on the website, and then we should determine some follow-up steps. And I think that's probably a collaborative process over time what those follow-up steps need to be, unless you're here tonight to present some, in which case I'm wide open. I'd like to hear what they are.
Yeah, we did come up with a few. I'm definitely a do your homework person. If you invite us to talk, like we should come with things to talk about.
Love it.
We could,
And I think even along that line, not only like potential zoning, but also potential, like should there be like standards or sort of like set types of things for like, as we, like I've had conversations with people who aren't in this room about similar kinds of topics when it comes to potential sewers downtown, like, design standards and thinking about like how do we incorporate them to make sure like, hey, this is sort of like the Holliston we want it to be.
Right.
Yep.
And that way we're not, presented with, something that's sort of anathema to that ideal.
And that's part of what we felt. We felt we're kind of at a crossroads here. The sewer project, when it happens, opens up enormous opportunities for the town, but challenges as well. And we wanted to be out ahead of this, and I'm sure the rest of the town does as well, so that we can steer what could be some exciting new development in the direction that we want it to go, rather than having it happen randomly or in a vacuum or in a way that doesn't lend itself to the character that the town is trying to achieve. So.
Yes. Damon, you have any?
Yeah, just a quick question. I know you covered this briefly last time, but what level of outreach have you already done with any of the property owners who are kind of on this list?
So it's been pretty informal. We were out at Celebrate Holliston. We had a table. We talked with people. I've had a couple people who have either I met there or have just emailed the Historical Commission looking for information, and I've been able to share the forms with them. I do think a very logical next step is to do some outreach to perhaps even all of the property owners on the list to let them know that this survey was accomplished and that they could find both more information about their property, but also do some education that just because their property has been inventoried does not impose upon them any requirements, any limitations to their property rights other than those already prescribed by town town bylaw. And you invite people to engage. Obviously, I've only seen a subset of people who are already interested, but most people think it's pretty cool to be able to see what their property once was and who owned it and things like that. And for the most part, I think people are often very kind of excited to know that their property has a real story behind it.
For the 4 that were potentially destined for the register, have
Yeah.
you guys chatted with them in person a little bit, and to what extent?
So we have talked with one of the property owners because that property owner is also a member of the Historical Society.
Makes it easier.
So while the commission and the society are very distinct, we have there's a lot of flow between the two. So I think we haven't done outreach because we wanted to be pretty intentional about it.
Love it,
And
yeah.
knowing that the board was also interested, we thought maybe working with the assessor might be an appropriate way to reach out to these folks. And again, I feel pretty strongly it needs to come from a place of education, that your house is really cool. And also, you should know that, but you don't have to do anything
Right, or
about
not.
it.
Is there an informational one-pager, a fact sheet? So it's like, so your house appeared on this list. Now what? Is there
Yes.
anything like that? I imagine
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
not the first
We could-
town to
no.
be
Yeah.
talking about
Do
that.
I lose my house? Like, no, you're good.
Well, like, what are my options?
we-
Why does this matter?
you're right.
What's
We-
Should I
important
do
about
it?
it?
Should I not?
Yeah.
What are the
Yeah.
We recognize the fact that something like this, if you just present this in a vacuum to a homeowner or
Right.
property owner, that could be alarming to them, because they might
Right.
view this as some sort of threat to their property rights, or as something that would affect the value of their
I
property.
can't paint
And-
my house anymore.
Right,
Yeah.
and we understand that. I think there's good information on the Mass Historical Commission website. I think, quite honestly, if we want to do at this point, now that we have a report, if we want to do a little forum or something like that, it would not be difficult to get somebody from Mass Historical, from the Historical Commission, to come out and do a presentation to the town, but specifically focused at the property owners in the downtown commercial district, just to indicate to them what this means and what it doesn't mean. So,
Are there any houses in this, I mean, what am I trying to say?
District?
No. So like I'll step back. So the survey went to very particular houses
Yes.
in very particular part of town.
yep,
And as we know, there are lots of historical houses throughout
Yes.
town.
yep.
Are there any of those houses brought into, not necessarily the survey, because I understand that was very specific, but do we have other information from some of those other houses that we can bring into this? Or like, is it incomplete? And then the second part of that question would be also is like, what if somebody says, I have a historical house, can I voluntarily do some kind of survey or something to add to this list?
Yeah, we have some really solid answers to those questions.
Exactly, yes.
So there has been a widespread documentation of historic buildings in Holliston. Some of it is outdated, but all of it would be a foundation. The coverage is pretty wide as a rule, and most of the many of the significant structures and probably most of the ones that look exciting have been documented. Sorry, but that's like preservation's bias, right? We're like,
yeah.
that one, it's different.
That looks cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's say it, which is good and
Right.
important.
Right.
So I think there's definitely space to be thinking about that, and certainly the commission has talked from time to time. The revised demolition delay bylaw actually allows us to create a list of structures that are on a bit of a list where, like, if they came up as part of demolition delay, we would consider them significant and would take different care with them. So we have talked about working to create sort of a larger, very locally based survey based on what the commission and the community says is important. We've talked about that, but taken no real action on that yet. In terms of if an individual homeowner was like, hey, my house is old and I would love to know more about it, we are in the process, and actually one of the next steps I proposed is to develop a program sanctioned by the commission to create official plaques. You've probably seen many of the like historic plaques on houses throughout the town. They were given out by different people with different perspectives and different priorities. And people email us periodically being like, it broke, the painter stole it.
Yeah.
What can we do? And our answer has been, well, like, you can make yourself another one.
Yeah.
But we'd really like to formalize that. And part of that process would be having them work with a consultant or to do very thorough research on their own through the Massachusetts Registry of Deeds to document their home's history and create, essentially, we talked about those B forms. That's what a single property is documented as, the equivalent of a B form for their property. And then we would work with them to create a plaque. The plaques would all be, we create a design that would be standard to the town and would have a specific look to it. If you've been in many different towns across the state, you'll often see that each town has their own flavor to the plaque that reflects kind of their own ethos and things like that, and we would work to create that as well. So that's definitely one of our big goals for the coming year, is to start to get that off the ground. We've surveyed a huge number of communities around us who have programs like this. We've gotten all of their thoughts, ideas, and policies, and we need to kind of sift through that and begin to create our own best practices document. And then we need to do a lot of community outreach to figure out what people in Holliston want.
Is there a funding source for that work, like a grant program that would support that?
So there is not necessarily a grant program, but on my list tonight, what the select board can do for us is to help us find some seed money to get this program off the ground. We'd like to see it be self-supporting, so in other words, you pay in for your plaque and that covers our costs, but I think we
can definitely.
would
I think it's
benefit from
reasonable
that.
to start to explore what that looks like in terms of cost and and need, and then we can figure out what we can work with the town manager to build it.
Am I the only one at the table thinking programmatic stabilization fund?
I was not, but.
Well, I mean, but I think we have to sort of understand like what we would need. We might not even need seed money per se. We could, because if it's self-sustaining, they might be able to, they might sort of figure it out, and then the person gives some money, and then that kind of pays for the action that's taking place. But I think let's look at what is needed, and then we can sort of explore options on how to make that happen. So before
I mean, the other possibility that we will probably, I'm sure we'll be exploring is continuation, something similar to what we did here, explore possible future grants. Federal funding is not as forthcoming as it was. Whether we would be successful or not, we don't know, but that is certainly another path we can
Are there
explore.
any we talk about the Collins Center did stuff for us when it came to like buildings and things like that. Is there are there any other equivalents, history departments, anything that in the area that might be interested in sort of helping to support as like a graduate program for a school or something? I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing ideas out there, given the historical nature of where we live.
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head, but that's certainly something that we can explore. I mean, there are organizations out there.
I think we could talk to Max Page at UMass Amherst, because
Yeah.
that's the major preservation program. And
Okay. See if there's anything.
Max
and
Page
there
is
might be
pretty community
ways to sort of
oriented.
find-
There are also organizations that, especially that focus on specific types of buildings, or if the building is architecturally significant or something like that. There are ways
Okay.
to things we can look into, but I can't
Sure.
can't give you a blanket answer. So.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think right now, why don't we, or if people are interested, unless we have other questions about it, a vote to accept the final report, and maybe we can, and with that acceptance, we would put it on the website, make sure it's put on the website, and adequate link to it. Is that if everybody's comfortable?
Yeah.
What was the date? Do you have the rough date it was completed? Just put it in the
August.
motion.
Well-
August 2025. I'm not sure
no,
we
let
had
me
a date
just check
beyond
the
that.
date on
Was
it.
there a specific date?
No, it is August 2025.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay.
I didn't know whether there was a day involved. I didn't think so.
No,
I think I
that's
just remember saying,
too-
too specific.
Yeah,
Would you like a motion?
I'd love one.
All right, move to accept the Holliston Historical Commission Village Commercial District Survey of August 2025.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Next steps. So I think we had talked about, it sounds like you folks are going to be working on some things from your end. Do you think maybe later this year you might be coming back to us with some suggestions, or what's your thought process on a timeline here?
It's not unreasonable.
I think it's not unreasonable. I think it's really possible. I think one of the questions is, one of the other big next steps, we've talked a little bit about design standards already tonight.
Yep.
The Historical Commission had been thinking a lot about design standards and ultimately backburnered it to get the demolition delay bylaw revised. And so that's something we'd like to bring back, and we need to work with the planning board directly on that. But I think probably our three major priorities for this year are the design standards, the plaque program, and then implementing the recommendations of, we received another state grant to have an archivist come review our collections, and we've received a great report that's really actionable, that we'll be looking to implement this year as well. So those are, for an all-volunteer commission of our size, that's actually a pretty big bite for the coming year.
Yeah.
So we'll see what we can do.
So I think, I think the two things that I think, like, we want to try to, the town should be reaching out to those four houses, like in an official capacity. We can see if it's the assessors, probably that's probably the most adequate. So we can work with them to make sure that that happens. And then I think, when it comes to those design standards and things like that, thinking about, talking to certainly the sewer commission, the planning board, maybe there's some sort of a public forum or something like that. And if you need our support and help on that to sort of put that forward, we can certainly do that. And then if you can, you had some other options when it came to, plaques and different kinds of things. Is there, is there a possibility we can see it by, like, in time for October, just to sort of say, like, if it's something that needs to be some town meeting action, that we would have a little bit of, have a little bit of time to get there.
I'm not sure something like this, I don't know whether it would necessarily require town meeting action, but fall town meeting would be a good target.
Yeah, that way, if there would need to be, it gives you sort of a natural place to make it happen.
And possibly time for a short presentation or something at the beginning of the meeting. I think people might find that an interesting way to approach something like that, to get a little more visibility to what we're trying to do.
And I think we could do outreach at Springtown meeting. We were very successful with the survey that actually led to this MHC planning grant that we basically handed out QR codes at Springtown meeting. So we may do something similar to get an inventory of plaques in town.
I think that'd be awesome.
I think we have a question from the back row, if you'd entertain any public comment.
Well, the person in the back row, I didn't want to single him out, but he was actually the person who came to me about design standards. If you want to just come forward to sort of, because we want to be able to hear you. Robert Widenecht.
I previously worked for an engineering firm, and so I had done a number of projects within historic built areas, Boston, Arlington, and Lexington. So I know you were talking about making zoning bylaw changes, design standards. The other thing is to have a design review committee. And I know the Arlington has a very good model for that. They were very tough in terms of even material, the facade material, and going after the architect with all, selection of materials and that sort of thing. So I would recommend that you look into maybe the Arlington model for that. And then also the MAPC is a good source. They may be able to help you in terms of instituting new bylaws and that sort of thing. But that's a good place to start.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
He was actually the one, he came to me a while back talking about design standards in lieu of sewers. So I'm glad you suggest that.
I think design standards are something that probably is a broader, going to require a broader discussion than just the historical commission. It's not the historical commission plays a role in it, but we're not.
But we also want to be thinking about it, especially in the context of sewers. If once we kind of let the cat out of the bag, it's out. And we want to think about if there's ways that we can sort of talk about it and work with it now. We're in a better position than after building is started, after things have happened. So I think anything that we can do proactively, I think would be very beneficial for everybody.
That's what our thinking has been right along, and why the timing on this whole process has happened when it has.
It's ideal.
Because we recognize that there are going to be. We wanted to be out ahead on this. So
totally, absolutely. Have you presented to the planning board, zoning board?
We haven't. I've talked with Karen Sherman a few times. To be clear for folks listening in or who are less familiar, we currently do have design standards on the books for village commercial as Chapter 5, Section K of the zoning bylaws. So those currently are available, but the commission thinks, based on some of our research and talking with folks informally, that maybe we could give them a little more of a backbone or a little more specificity in certain areas. So I think the first step, per my conversations with Karen Sherman, is to have that conversation with the planning board. Because it is already an established bylaw, there is some room for the planning board simply to revise it, is my understanding. But it could end up being something that needs to be more of a full bylaw process, particularly if we were to set up a design review committee, because currently those standards are overseen by the planning board.
Okay.
When you, if I may ask, when you get to that point where you have an agenda item with the planning board, would you just keep the board informed?
Sure.
I imagine a member or several members of the board, this board would like to attend to follow this conversation.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I think why we haven't pushed the planning board too hard yet. I think we felt this conversation needed to take place first, so.
Yeah, and I think, I would also, encourage you also talk to the sewer commission, reach out to them and see if
Yes.
there's a time that you can.
Yeah.
Sure.
Even if you're just like making them aware of.
Yeah.
We've
some
had a
of this.
couple of casual conversations
Yeah.
with the folks on the sewer commission already, and,
Right.
let them understand that we're not,
Maybe it would
we're in no way making any attempt to interfere with what they're trying to do. As taxpayers,
Right.
as residents of the towns, we're supportive of it. We're just trying to be
Yeah, and I think
working
also
alongside them, not in
giving
not in
information is
opposition.
never going to be detrimental.
Yeah,
People not
we
knowing,
should-
like, this is what we're talking about, this is what's going
Exactly.
on. What do you guys think?
Exactly.
And then I think the third one is envisioning future Holliston might have some interest, sort of understanding
Okay.
what this stuff is going on as well.
Because, and I think that's a good point, because I think most of the surveys have indicated, and one of the things that we've worked from is that most of the surveys have indicated that one of the things that is that people find appealing about Holliston is the visual aspect of our downtown. This is one of the things that strikes people as they drive through, and lends, so we look at something like this, we feel that there's an economic value to the town
I was just going
as
to say,
well.
Yeah.
I would like, moving forward, if you haven't already, that you connect with the economic development
Yes.
Is there
coordinator.
another one too?
Yeah.
Because these buildings, we look at them and we think
Yeah.
we kind of take them for granted, but they drive some of the economics of this town, and
Yeah.
probably could do more. With some proper-
in that kind of a context, it might actually be best if you went to Envisioning Future Holliston first, because there's a member of the planning board. I'm on Envisioning Future Holliston. There's a member of the EDC. There's like all those. You can sort of get
There's
into people's
overlap.
heads
Yep.
with a
Yep.
lot of overlap with in one conversation.
Yeah.
Certainly, talking about some of these other ones, but we can help. But in that group, in that setting, can help facilitate some of those other things, as you said. Well, volunteers. So,
Yeah.
adding more. We don't want to add more work to your plate, but having those conversations in that
No,
kind of a setting, we can leverage that to sort of have other agents to,
Right.
to talk
Yeah.
about it.
We're also not, we're not necessarily the best place to do some of these things. We can address the historic aspect of it, but
Right.
we're not, we can talk about the economic development aspect of it. We can
Right.
talk about the things that are being contemplated by Envisioning
Yeah.
Future Holliston, but there again, our lane is the historic end of it. We
But
can
sometimes
work-
it's just the marketing of it.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
just like if we're
100%.
talking about, let's talk about the economic benefits
And
of
if-
historical places.
And if we can all work together to produce the same end result, then that makes everybody happy.
Yes.
Exactly. Any other thoughts from you folks about next steps with the final report? I think we kind of touched on it, Frank. We have kind of like what we want to do on that side of things and kind of some ideas. And, we're not like, it has to be done at these times and
Yeah,
things like
no,
that.
we'll-
So please, so
we'll
if,
work
something
forward on that.
happens, it'll happen when it
Yeah.
happens, and we're trying to move in that direction.
Yeah.
And then lastly, one of the questions I'd thrown out to you in emails to both of you was to talk about sort of, when you read the 1999 master plan, there is a historical part to it. And one of the things that, Sarah, thank you so much for doing this. You kind of went
Yeah,
through,
that
like,
was-
what has happened, what hasn't happened
Yeah.
from that master plan. Because sometimes you look at it like, oh, that seems very reasonable. And it's like, well, this didn't happen because of...
Right. Sarah did a
Whatever.
fantastic job putting that together.
So thank you so much for doing that. I
Sure.
think that's, really helpful. I guess, so, we can review some of those things sort of offline rather than getting into the weeds on every single one of those. But I think my big conversation that I want to have that we've started having is, do we want to push towards changing a master plan? And how does that impact historical places, historical things, and just wanted to sort of get your 2 cents about that as you've gone through this exercise, both the survey and looking at the master plan, and what you think about that kind of an effort, if you think it's worthwhile, you think it's something that we should do, what do you think about it?
Sure. So I guess I should give a personal disclaimer is that professionally I'm a museum master planner. So as someone who master plans professionally, of course I think a master plan is an important and valuable tool,
Yes.
and that at 26 years old ours has reached the end of its usable life. And so I do think that there's a lot of benefit to doing a new master plan, and I think what a good master plan would be is actually a lot like what we had in 1999, one that really looks holistically. So they had 7 areas of focus, one of which was historical and cultural resources, and I think that same kind of holistic focus of like what are all the pieces that come together to make Holliston a town and a community that is distinct, it would be an appropriate way to do that. And I think it is really important that the historical resources are represented in some way in that planning process, whatever shape that takes, if the town moves forward with a new master planning process.
Okay. So you seem to think it's a good idea.
I do, yes.
Okay. Has the commission talked about it, anything like this at all, or is it just sort of the offline conversations, just out of curiosity?
We did consider it at our last meeting,
Yeah.
essentially in the sense that we felt it was a process we'd like to be a part of, because we think that historic resources have a really critical role in defining the experience of living in Holliston and the feel of the place and what attracts people to come here and invest in it. And so I think we talked about essentially seeing this process as maybe heading down the tracks and something we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss the train on, that we wanted to be consulted and engaged with.
I find this fascinating. I'm glad you shared your comments. Ben and Damon really strongly feel that we provide a service to the planning board as a select board, as the executive board for the town. We're the point of contact for so many boards and committees, both organizationally in our structure, but also just in our interactions through our meetings and the type of items, issues that come to this board. For example, accepting this report. We hear from boards and committees on what needs they have, what goals they have, what priorities they have. And I feel in that way we offer service to the planning board, which is to gather this information, these comments about goals, priorities, and needs for the Historical Commission in this case, but in other cases, other boards and committees, and bringing that to the planning board and saying, basically, this is what we're hearing, this is what we're seeing, will you engage with us on this topic? So you're not the first board or committee to sit before us and share a thought about a master plan. You won't be the last.
Yeah.
But this is certainly a public meeting, and I feel like in this moment, I just want to recognize, I think our board has a service to provide the planning board. And I would like to see us move in that direction, to engage with them, to pass on, to share what we're hearing from all of these other volunteer boards and committees that are doing excellent work for the town of Holliston.
I'm coming at it from the angle, like, envisioning future Holliston. Tomorrow, one of the members of the Economic Development Committee is bringing forward at the meeting tomorrow for EFH sort of a master plan process for making sure that we're constantly like updating and things like that. It's a little bit more. It's not necessarily updating the current plan, but thinking about like, hey, we need to make sure that we have some plans that we don't leave this fallow for 26 years. We're looking at it every few years and going forward with the process and some kind of engagement. So I'm sort of looking at it like, hey, as we're talking about some of these things, there might be other angles that we should pursue to think about it from, not just from an economic development perspective, but from a historical perspective as well.
Greatly appreciate the specificity of this, that why a master plan? Well, why a master plan? Tonight, why a master plan update is this. So I really appreciate you coming forward with some very specific comments and as to the benefit or need that you see in an updated master plan. So thank you.
When is the next meeting for the historical commission?
It is, next week. We'll be meeting next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Damon, any thoughts about master plan?
I'm generally supportive of master plans.
Okay.
So, no further comments. I'm not adding anything useful there.
All right. I mean, I think it's something that, I want to push for, but I recognize that it's a planning board document. It's a Tina's point collecting that, and I'm looking at it from this angle, from our board's perspective, and from Vision of Future Holliston's perspective, and from a strategic planning perspective. That it's sort of a document that we need to be thinking about as putting, rubber to the road for things, as opposed to just, hey, we want to do nice things. Hey, this is how we do those things.
Well, because a good master plan will give you that, it's really a vision document, right? Is that it's that mountain you can see in the distance, and it
Right.
gives you that guidepost to get there, whereas your strategic plan, actionable, goal-oriented.
Right.
But without a good master plan, you can't do a good strategic plan.
Right. They need to go together.
Yes.
They need to be both working together. Any other thoughts about master
The
plan?
only
Historical
last thought I had was that we appreciate the support of this board. We feel there's both cultural and economic advantages to preserving and maintaining and promoting Holliston's historic past, and incorporating something like this into a master plan or into our future strategic plan. But we couldn't, obviously we're biased. We couldn't do it without the support of this board and without the support of the other boards in town, Economic Development, Envisioning Future Holliston Planning Board, all the partners in this effort. So we appreciate that as well. So
When I was doing the survey analysis from the strategic plan, historic came up quite a bit.
Yes.
Like, right up there with
yeah.
resources, like
Yep.
natural resources, was historic nature.
I think it's
of the
there.
town. Those were two very important parts of
Yep.
Holliston's character.
May I make one last comment?
Of course.
I had the benefit of listening to the MAPC's Arts and Culture team talk about this type of work in any community here in Massachusetts, and they made this comment, and I wrote it down because it just meant so much to me. It's very important to keep your feet firmly on the ground. We are normal people living average lives here in Holliston, and the reference that they made, the comment that they made, was in recognizing the historical aspects of your community, the context, whatever, you are acknowledging the common person of the time. And I thought, well, I'm nothing more than a common person. I could relate to that. This isn't about anything other than understanding the common person of a different time. And that just really resonated with me. It's very approachable and very grounded
You're
as
it's
why
an
this
excellent
work
point,
is
Tina.
important. So I
And
wanted to share
this
that.
town would not be what it is today without the efforts of the people who have lived here for the past
Right.
300 years. So we stand on their shoulders. So.
We do.
Okay.
All right. I think we're good. Thank
All
you so
right.
much for coming in this evening. Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy New Year. Well, we really appreciate being here, and we really appreciate the support
Yeah.
of the board over the last couple of years. We feel like we've really gained a lot of traction, and so we're excited to keep going forward.
And keep us apprised on how things are going.
We will.
And then we can, when we get to things like forums and things like that, if you want to go that route, we can work together
Good.
to make sure that those things are promoted and part of
Perfect.
it. And thank you so much for your time this evening. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
All right. Moving on. All right. So now we are going to bring forward, we're going to talk about appointing a new assistant town manager, HR director.
Yes.
So Frank, if you want to kick us off and talk a little bit about who we have
Absolutely.
to
So,
discuss.
Cheryl, do you want to set up at the table for
Yeah,
us?
please come on up.
So we know who we're talking about. So the Town Manager Act specifies that the Assistant Town Manager appointment will be ratified by the Select Board. So tonight, it is my pleasure, I already said that, to present Cheryl Huell for the Select Board's consideration as the town's next Assistant Town Manager, HR Director. Cheryl is no stranger to Holliston. She served as the Human Resources Benefits Manager from February 2021 to March 2024. And during her time here in Holliston, she actually took part in creating the HR department. So it is very much a homecoming for her. Cheryl, after leaving Holliston, left to become the Human Resources Manager just next door in Medway, reporting directly to the town manager, during which time she not only managed all HR matters of the town, but was also involved in other initiatives directed by the town manager's office. Cheryl is a Society of Human Resources Management Senior Certified Professional, and during the interview process set herself apart from other candidates by demonstrating knowledge of not only the nitty-gritty HR work that is required of a small-town HR director, but also that she has the required collaborative and communication-based skill set needed to work with department heads to deliver not only for our residents, but for our employees. I also want to really, really thank Chief Cassidy, Chief Stone, and Jackie Weiner for all of their time commitment in serving on the different interview panels. And at this point, I will open it up to the board for any questions that they have of Cheryl. And thank you for coming, Cheryl.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in tonight,
Oh,
Cheryl. If you
no,
just
big
want to
heck.
kind of reintroduce yourself to
Yes.
the board and the community, and what brings you back to Holliston, and anything you want to sort of add, and then we might have a couple questions for you. So,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, for those that don't know my full background, I've been in human resources for over 30 years. Started at Sun Life Financial in the financial services industry, doing HR. I was primarily in benefits. That was my specialty for the 10 years I was there. When I started to raise a family, the commute was too much for me, so I decided to stay local, and I went to a local dental practice who had just opened, and they didn't have any HR services in place. So I ended up staying there 20 years and took that from a practice of 4 people to about 17 or so by the time that I left, multiple specialties, and I did all facets of HR there, payroll, everything. When my son went to college, I decided to go back into more of a HR role, like in something other than the healthcare field, and I came to Holliston. I was the first person when Travis was here. They had been working with Mary Beth Bernard on starting an HR department. She was a consultant that we used a few times. So I was the first person hired. I worked with Mary Bosquet in the treasurer's office. At the time, Mary was doing all of the HR herself, essentially. And then Kathleen was hired, Kathleen Buckley, and I worked with her, and I was here a little over 3 years, and an opportunity came up in Medway, so I decided to go, and I learned a lot there. It was different from my time in Holliston. I was physically, well, I still am, physically seated within the town manager's office, so I got a lot of exposure to other facets of working for a town. So the reason I'm looking to come back is I think this is the right time in my career for a step up in the human resources area, and the idea of learning something new was very exciting to me. That's pretty much why I wanted to come back.
Great. Tina, questions, comments?
I'm thrilled that we got you back from
Thank
Medway.
you.
I remember the day when Kathleen told me that you were leaving. I remember the comments and emotions around that. So it was sad to see you go, but that makes it all the sweeter that you're coming back. So
Yes.
how's that for
Very good.
a welcome?
Appreciate
I
it.
do have a couple specific questions
Sure.
that should be very easy, but
Okay.
I'm sure you shared it all in the interview process. But for the benefit of the people listening, I'm just going to ask you 2 or 3 real quick questions. One of them being your experience in Medway offered you a unique experience you hadn't had in Holliston, maybe probably not in the dental practice that you were involved with. You called out collective bargaining as an experience you had. Could you just speak to how you worked in Medway
Yes.
in regards to collective bargaining?
Absolutely. In Medway, they have 3 collective bargaining units. One is municipal, and that encompasses the Department of Public Works, the library, and the clerical administrative staff in the town. We have a police and a fire. When I was in Holliston, the contracts were renewed by Travis. He pretty much did that. There was only one that was up for renewal during my time. So I had experience administering the contracts, but the experience was more in Medway. There were certain instances that I had to collaborate with people to make some changes. For example, the fire department is short-staffed, having to do a lot of forces, and they were trying to come up with something to alleviate the stress of the people getting forced and all that. And the chief came to us and thought about instituting a new model called the per diem model. So I had to do work with that. I've had experience creating side letters with the contracts. I've had experience administering grievances. I've had experience with pretty much all things on all the contracts, multiple side letters. I had to have positions regraded and reclassified for the library. They went through a tremendous change, and we found that there were some roles that weren't in the correct grade. We created some new positions recently and just tried to make that into a little bit better of a situation for the library.
Thank you. I'm compelled by your stating that you're looking for professional growth
Yes.
throughout the past number of years, and you're bringing that to Holliston as well. So in terms of the assistant town manager role, how do you chase down that professional growth? Are you looking for certifications? Are you looking for training? Are you going to involve yourself in organizations outside the town of Holliston, like the MMA, Massachusetts Municipal Association, or
Yes.
others? Do you have any sort of, and maybe you don't, you're going to take some time to figure out how you're going to do that, but anything you would like to share about how you'll go about the professional growth that you look to accomplish here in Holliston?
It's a little bit of both of that.
Yep.
I'm already a member of the Mass Municipal Association. I'm a member of the Mass Municipal HR Association.
Okay.
I'm a member of SHRM, obviously. I think my approach to getting into the assistant town manager part of it will be to immerse myself in the role, get familiar with the boards and committees to find out what the needs really are. I've had lengthy conversations with Frank about mentoring me and suggesting things that would help. One of the first things I thought of was a municipal finance class that's offered by MMA that I thought would be very helpful for me and that I'm interested in taking. So I am open to any educational opportunities that come my way. And we'll gladly take those. So I'm going to see what the needs are and then try to get direction on what the best way is to educate myself and learn how to serve the needs of those boards, committees, staff, everybody.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're
I'm all
welcome.
set.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's, just philosophically, first of all, I'm really glad that we're having you here. Like, I'm
Thank
delighted
you.
that you're joining
So
in.
happy to be here.
What's your thought on kind of like maintaining good labor relations while also holding a high bar for accountability in municipal government? I know it's more philosophical and vague, but kind of curious where your
It's
heart's
not,
at.
it's actually, it's critical. So I feel like our, in the workforce today, keeping the employees motivated, satisfied, and wanting to be here is very important while balancing what the needs of the town are, financial and otherwise. So I think it's trying to develop a relationship of trust with the people that you're trying to work with. I feel like you have to know what the outcome is, and sometimes there are hard conversations, but I think it's about building relationships and making sure that everybody's needs are understood and realistic expectations of what can be met on both sides.
That's awesome to hear. Do you have any kind of early thoughts on, and again, I'm not holding your feet to the fire on this, but on how to like assess kind of performance evaluation for the, I guess, the softer skills? So like, you know, we have folks who perform a function X, but there's also the public facing function of like how they interact with the folks in town,
Right.
with citizens and such. And that's always a tough line, I think, for municipal governments, because it's like you can be perfectly good at the job, but also have real challenges in communicating with individuals, and that can have like a net positive or negative effect.
Right.
Any early thoughts on how you might go about assessing that in the future? I know it's forward facing. I'm just gonna, I won't tie you to anything. on
That's
this.
okay.
Yeah.
I think that doing performance evaluations and listening to our managers and what their feedback is and what they're observing with the employees, making sure that we have good training in place. But I think that we have to go at it as providing them with the training that we think they need for what we want to see, and making sure that we can evaluate those programs to see if they're giving people the skills that we want them to have.
Interesting. Yeah, and I'd be very curious as we go on to have conversations about kind of like how to use assessment tools that are from the public, inward facing. I think that's
Surveys.
always a mixed
Yes.
dimension that
Yeah.
some people don't track, but I think it could be really useful for
Yeah,
us.
I think it's very interesting. I mean, that's who we're here to serve, so I think getting feedback from people who utilize our services is very important.
Great. That's all I have, and I'm just so delighted that you're joining us.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back.
Thank
It's so,
you.
it's so nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
Appreciate having you do these things. I had a couple quick questions for
Okay.
you. So the first one I have is just sort of, do you have any, like, in, again, sort of along Damon's line, I'm not holding you to anything, but, like, do you have any thoughts about, like, what you want to do when you come into the role? Like, you know, first 60 days, first 90 days, first 6 months, do you have, like, sort of like an idea sort of like of where trajectory you'd like to sort of go in that during the first few months of your time here?
I do. I think the first thing, and this is what I know of, and then I think after this it's going to be up to me to work with Frank on this, but I need to immerse myself back into the benefits in HR. Joanne's been working down there by herself, looking for some help. A lot has changed since I've left. We've got the new health insurance, so I really need to identify what everything is right now, get myself up to speed so we have a good second person. Never really a fan of one person knowing how to do everything and always depending on that one person for everything. So I'd like to get up to speed on what HR is looking like right now from Joanne's perspective. I'd like to look at what positions we have open and what your recruiting needs are. I feel like that's something I would want to get right into. I can monitor the website. I don't see much up right now, but something that's good to know, see what's coming down the pike. So it would be to immerse myself in the HR and then see what Frank's priorities are for the role. That's what I'm
Okay.
thinking.
Okay. And then another question I had for you was thinking about personnel bylaw changes and things like that. Have you had some experience doing that in Medway? I mean, I'm not asking you
Yeah.
have you analyzed all of our bylaws? I mean, that's a little ahead of things, but just sort of like thinking, holistically, what kinds of things your experience has been in Medway, and thinking about moving towards do we need to do some things sooner, things like that, just sort of like putting that on the radar as well as, if there's opportunities to do those things, do we do them in May? But also continually trying to make sure that we're up to date on all those pieces as necessary. So just sort of like what your thoughts are about bylaw changes and things like that for personnel.
My thoughts are that it should be an ongoing process, first of all, and I can tell you that when I compare the two, Holliston versus Medway, Holliston's a little bit more complex with the consolidated personnel bylaws that we have, and Medway's had the town manager act for a much longer time, so they have a personnel policy that is actually issued by the town manager, and all changes go through that. So it's actually much simpler. So I have had experience in changing that. For example, I'm trying to think of one of the ones that we had to change recently. We have a health reimbursement account, let's say, and so people who incur deductible expenses, they can file for reimbursement. But there weren't parameters set on it for, you have to do it within 6 months of the end of the plan year, that sort of thing. So we put some controls on it, and it was as simple as we updated the personnel policies and just issued it out.
Yeah.
The consolidated personnel bylaws that are in Medway are a lot more involved, and they're longer. I think they're important. Some of my priorities would be to review things like our discrimination policy, to make sure that we're compliant with things like that. I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what state they were in when I left. I've looked a little bit, but I think it's going to be an ongoing process to look at those and update them. And I need to understand a little bit better, and I will, how the Town Manager Act is in place here, and is this something that Frank is able to take over by issuing more standardized, simplified personnel policies.
And I think along that line, I think, we've, as the person who kind of took the Town Manager Act, made some couple tweaks and things like that. John did most of the work. I didn't write it, but thinking about some of those things that were open to opportunities as they come forward, if there are things that could be streamlined, changed, refined, to make sure that the business of HR is handled by the people, the professionals, whenever possible as appropriate. I think to me is something. I'm just saying that now. We haven't had a discussion about it since it's not a select board comments, but I think being able to sort of think about those things, I think is valuable, and not being afraid to hey, can we rethink this? Hey, can we change this? And we want to hear those kinds of options and opportunities to see if we can, it feels like Holliston sometimes can be a little bit 20th century thinking, and we want to move to the 21st century with some of the things. And I'm not picking out HR as that, but it just that, as you go through, not being afraid to bring those things forward as you think is necessary.
That would be great, and I think that it's important to have the bylaws clear and set expectations for people. It just makes it easier for everyone to do their job, and it's important, it protects the town. It's just, I'm very interested in that.
Absolutely. Okay, so according to the Town Manager Act, we are not the appointing authority.
Right.
Frank is, but we ratify the assistant town manager position. So we have the opportunity when we can sort of discuss amongst each other. It's like, are we comfortable ratifying? I mean, I personally am. I think Cheryl's great. I have full confidence that she can do the job, and I'm excited to work with her. And I think she's interested and
Yeah.
wants to do more and wants to learn more, and I'm excited. We hope you can come to some meetings sometimes
I
with
plan
us
to.
not every meeting, but certainly, we get into like town meeting times and things like that.
Absolutely.
Having you participating and part of that, the conversation, I think, is very valuable for
Yeah,
us.
I look forward to it.
But I'm in favor of doing that, and just wanted to sort of hear your thoughts before.
I think you're looking at me because I make the motion, not because
You make the
I might
motion,
not be in
and-
favor.
and
I'm like,
I'm
why are you
enthusiastic,
looking at me
yes.
then?
It's just kind of my nature is to kind of look this way, so I can do this if you want. But I'll be inevitably
Now I feel on the
coming
spot.
back.
I'm not feel comfortable with that.
Oh, what are your thoughts, Dana? You comfortable?
Let's move to
Ratify.
ratify. Yeah.
Yes, let's
Okay,
go.
absolutely. Just checking. Just
Yeah,
wanted to
on
check.
board.
Okay. We have a motion. Can we have a motion to ratify the appointment of Cheryl Houle to the HR Assistant Town Manager position effective February 9th? Is that correct? Okay, that's the motion.
Okay. Move to approve the appointment of Cheryl Huell to the Assistant Town Manager, HR Director position effective February 9th, 2026.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
I'm thrilled to be back.
We're so happy to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to working with you.
Look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Frank's like, it cannot come fast enough. February 9th cannot come fast enough.
Thank God.
4 more weeks. All right, moving on. We have Mass Trails funding priorities for Conservation Commission and Trails Committee projects. I know Robert is here. Robert, if you want to come forward, or if you just wanted to, you certainly can. But you don't. I didn't want to put you on the spot. Although I know, knowing you, I'm like, he's going to be prepared. So. So we have Robert Wideneck from the Trails Committee, and here to sort of talk about, Frank, could you just kind of like bring this forward, sort of just
Sure.
talk a little bit about why we're having this conversation?
Sure. So we have, the state offers a Mass Trails grant program that a couple of different committees in town were interested in pursuing this year. The deadline is February 1st, so just in a couple of weeks. So we have, like I said, 2 committees that are interested in pursuing it for 3 different projects. And so we caught up internally about, what might make sense, the most sense to pursue the grant funding for. Obviously, you don't want to have conflicting applications. You want to give the town the best shot overall. So after speaking with Tyler and James and Robert, we think the best course of action here is to prioritize the Upper Charles Trail drainage improvements, which is the 3rd phase of that project.
Correct.
Right. So for a couple of different reasons. First, the other 2 projects are studies or engineering design type projects. So there's a trails master plan that the Concom would like to move forward, and the other is actually also a rail trail related project. It's engineering for the restoration of the Phipps Tunnel. So we thought a more shovel ready project, or a project that actually results in work being done, may be prioritized by the state when they're evaluating the different applications. It also happens to be the most expensive of the projects. So
How much?
I think around $100,000 is what we
89,000, but they match, we have to do an 80-20, so we have to come up with 20% of that. And we've been using volunteer help for all these other projects. So all the volunteer help, and then the DPW has been great. They've been providing equipment and their help, so we count that towards the match. And so it works out that we'll end up asking them for, I think it was a little over 50,000.
Okay.
Just for context, the other 2 projects in terms of cost, Trails Master Plan, we have a sort of rough estimate. It's probably somewhere between 20 and 30. I think a few years ago they were going for 17 or 18, or I think you said, so we assume some escalation.
That was a while ago, but
Yeah, some escalation there. And then the Phipps Tunnel engineering, we have pegged at around 50,000, which I think we actually just got the 2 bids back for that so far. Given, again, sort of the number of potential applications and the limited source of funding, we thought it best to prioritize one. And so the recommendation to the select board is to prioritize the continued drainage project, or to continue rather the drainage project down by 1750, and potentially work with the Community Preservation Committee to seek funding for the 2 additional projects. If they, and I think the way to approach the CPC with these, I guess, 2 remaining projects is, we have 3 projects that the town is hoping to accomplish this year, all trails related. Let's take sort of a holistic approach to this effort and say, okay, these are all the trails things that we want to get done this year. We're seeking outside funding for, the most expensive piece of it. Let's see if we can use CPC funding for, these other 2 maybe cost-wise smaller projects. And if, if needed, or, if they request, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but, there probably are alternate sources of funding that we could tap for, if they wanted to see some sort of, 5% match or a 10% match or something like that to the CPC grant. But I think this approach makes the most sense.
Now, just one sort of big picture question here that I had was sort of the, I'm glad we were sort of able to identify, multiple stakeholders looking for similar sources of funding from a grant program. Are grant programs generally going through your office that are applied to by the town? Like at least just like an advisory role in some capacity? They're kind of like letting you know, hey, we're doing this. Here's the grant that's being applied for. Here's the application, and then making sure they're keeping you apprised of anything that's coming forward from any board and committee, not just ones that report to us.
Yeah, I can't think of any. I haven't had any surprises yet where there's been like we got this grant, and I never signed that paperwork. So
I bring it up
Yeah.
too because like a couple of years ago we got one that was a little bit of a surprise. That kind of the grant process, like the select board did find out about it. But it was it felt like it was not really a sort of a shared experience, and just sort of thinking about thinking about things in sort of like a Holliston way, not necessarily this board, that board, this place, that place. Sort of, I would just sort of want to find a way to make sure that anything. I mean, certainly you're signing off on most of them, but there might be others that might be going through other channels that don't need to be signed off by you, and I think it would be important that you should be knowing about what's going on in those other places, and making sure they're coming to you about it.
And I think in this case, it was a combination of both, volunteers and staff that were sort of raising the flag. Like, we don't, we want to do this, but what's the right way to go about it? And, both reached out to me and said, what's the best way to move forward here.
I think it makes sense.
Ben, are you suggesting a communication from the town manager to department heads and to boards and committee chairs to say
Sure.
grant applications?
Yeah, just like make
Notify
sure,
the
just
town
make sure,
manager.
like you're copying the town manager on any grant applications, something like that, something to that effect, or sending any grant applications through the town manager's office.
Seems like a reasonable.
I think I
step.
even if it's just like collecting them, just to sort of know what's out there. So there's sort of like a house of grants that if people want to find out more or look back at other things, that there's one library of them in a space. I think would be a good idea.
Sure.
So I would say, to Tina's point, yes, we should let everyone know, hey, you're applying for a grant. If it's not already signed off by the town manager directly, please make sure you're just sending a copy to the town manager's office. That makes it. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
Any questions about the Mass Trails grant? I mean, I think it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I just have one on in terms of scope for the access path from 1750 down to the trail. Would this grant opportunity allow for any kind of improvement? I think of that as a very critical piece of infrastructure in terms of connectivity, because the time will come where, excuse me 1 second.
Oh boy.
Yeah, forgive me. The Johnson Drive neighborhood, your neighborhood behind the Pope Industrial Park. I see a future where we will have much greater connectivity from those neighborhoods, and I see their point of access to the trail most likely being down through 1750. So, does this application give us the ability to improve that?
It actually will, in fact,
great.
do that. I had met with Rob Walker a couple of weeks ago about some other things, but we were also talking about it. We drove around the site and looked at it. But one of the things we're planning on doing, similar, we're doing a similar project to what we did at Phipps Tunnel. You know, we took out the ditches, put in pipes, put in gravel, raised the grade and all that. So in this case, one of the issues with the access going from the trail to the 1750 Washington Street building is that it needed to meet the ADA slope requirements.
yep.
And so with this rate, we're planning on raising the grade in that area
Of the trail itself.
of the trail itself, and so that would actually benefit. So he, Rob Walker, plans to, you know, obviously hold off until if we're successful getting this grant,
Yeah.
raising the grade, then that'll help make the grade less.
Okay.
Going up to the.
Okay.
Is there a crosswalk there?
There is not now, but you know, when you think big picture
Yeah.
about connecting folks up in that neck of the woods,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah, like
1750
being
is.
able to get from Johnson Drive across the street in a safe way. Like, is there's that sort of? I was just thinking as I drove down there.
No.
Like, there's like, you know, you can get to a lot of Brentwood that way, and you know, getting that access in a safe way could be
Yeah,
interesting.
a lot of our neighborhood and the people behind us all come down through the Pope Industrial Park.
Okay.
There's actually a connection between Hemlock Drive and Pope
So
Industrial
you're gonna
Park,
have
and so
Chestnut
that's
then.
one place. And it's been on the, what is it, Complete Streets project, to have crosswalks at all those locations. So
Yeah.
at or near the post office, Morgan's Way, is that the right?
No, you're thinking, I think Johnson Drive.
Johnson Drive.
Right. It's
Yeah,
about a
that's
500-foot, if that, section where you look, anyway.
Yeah.
That is a future conversation. However, if in this application we're able to build out some of the connection before it's actually made, it's a good thing. So I'm glad to hear that.
That's a good thing to add to the grant application.
If
'cause
you can, yes.
Trails, Mass Trails always want to have connectivity. And so if we could say, we'll make improvements to the
Just reference,
1750.
yeah, you can reference the Tier 2 plan that we have with
I
Complete
do need to
Streets.
modify that grant application.
Yeah, yep.
Okay. That's good. Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Damon?
Just in terms of kind of ordinality, after this priority, of the two other priorities, which one do you favor as the next step?
Well, the Phipps Tunnel restoration could be a major project, and it would involve shutting down the project for maybe close to a year. And so I don't see that as an imminent danger of, you know, it's not, we've had engineers look at it and they say, well, it's not going to fall immediately, but it's, you know, it's there and it's, you know, it should be dealt with. So I would think, you know, the
My
next.
heart just stopped. There's
Sorry
certain
for the
faces
question.
in the room that are like,
Woodland Street Bridge.
do not say that out
Highland
loud.
Street.
There's Robert up there.
Frank's like, shoot, why'd you say that out loud?
Sorry, Frank.
Forgive me.
So,
Continue.
but
I'm
yeah, I
sorry.
don't think, you know, imminent danger. So from a planning standpoint, I think the Mass Trails probably would be next.
Okay.
And there may be other sources of funding too.
Excellent. Just curious. Thank you.
I guess two questions along that line for those other projects. So the master plan, would that include potential additional trails or adding any new trails, things like that, or just like?
I'm not that familiar with what the scope was.
Yes, so I think it probably would. I think a focus of it would be increasing or improving, whatever the right word is, connectivity. So I think connecting trails via new trails, I think, would probably be a piece of that. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I always wonder, like, you know, one of the things that comes up is, you know, like the fact that sometimes like the Queens is kind of isolated in many respects, is like other ways that we could leverage trails, because sometimes doing things like sidewalks is precarious or extremely challenging
Right.
in the case of like,
Especially-
things like Winter Street.
Right.
But, you know, you have like Mellon Street, like, you know, is that something that could be expanded, and then suddenly you could find ways to connect parts of the town to high school or downtown and things like that? Are there places that we can leverage connectivity from that perspective?
It's also kind of the Trails Master Plan is well timed with the update of the Open Space and Recreation Plan that we're working on right now too. So I think once the mapping portion of that effort is completed, I think there'll be the focus will switch to public input, and so we'll be able to see you know what people want.
Yeah.
Is connectivity an issue? Where is it an issue specifically? Should the town be acquiring new land somewhere to
Yeah.
improve connectivity? That type of stuff.
I mean, I always thought about that. Like, I used to live on Highland Street, and I was probably not even 1,000 feet from where the Phipps Tunnel is, and yet the trail was like not accessible to me whatsoever on Highland Street. it is, we did try it. I tried it once, and that is not a grade that's good. I always think to myself, I was like, man, that'd be nice, like, to have a little bit of access here to be able to, because there's a whole part of town that would be like, hey, this is great. Going Winnicking Woods is not very accessible either, and it was just like, this is something. Just thinking about, like, finding ways to make things a little bit more accessible for more people, I think is
Yeah, the
interesting.
Master Trails Plan should look at that, and I had worked on the Needham Master Trails Plan, and that did that exact thing, was that it looked at taking the various open space through town, how do we connect that via sidewalks, crosswalks, that sort of thing, to get it to all these trails connected, and so that was part of it, and we included the costs of sidewalks and that sort of thing. So,
The other one, like, I think about is, like, Wayland had, they have, like, a trail from, like, one of the main streets to get to the school, and it's sort of like, it's a little more open, so it's not as, like, so if kids are walking there to try to get to school, it's not something scary or something like that. But I just think about finding those opportunities and finding those ways to get people to other places when sidewalks aren't necessarily available or feasible in circumstances, and thinking about trails. That we've seen that with the rail trail, that people sort of do see it as that backbone throughway to get to other parts of the town that I think is valuable and important. So this is an opportunity to talk about that.
Can I ask,
Of course.
just back up to the Trails Master Plan again? This is put forward by the Conservation Commission
Correct.
as a support to the Open Space Master Plan?
Not specifically. I think I just used that as sort of an example of where during the open space and recreation plans update, we might gain some feedback from residents, the public, about where connectivity might be an issue.
So this is not a today conversation because there's no active planning right now for a Trails Master Plan. This is a down the road.
Right. I think right now the Conservation Commission is still trying to get the funding to move forward with the plan.
Maybe you and I could talk offline, but I'm listening to the conversation. I'm really wondering if it's not a bike pedestrian master plan, where in Holliston so much of, if we're thinking of trail use, we are thinking of pedestrian and bicycle use for the purpose of active transportation. But maybe I'm missing the scope of a Trails Master Plan. That's why I would like maybe we talk offline. But depending on what that scope it includes, I'm wondering if a pedestrian bicyclist master plan is a broader document that accomplishes what we're talking about with the Trails Master Plan and something else, which is, I would say, needed in Holliston, given this public input we do receive. So maybe you and I could talk.
Yeah.
Interested to learn more about the scope of a Trails Master Plan. Okay.
Any thoughts on that? So you perk up a little bit.
well, no, it's sort of a different animal from what I think the
I think I just
Conservation
need to
Commission's
learn
doing.
more. Yeah.
Well, the Conservation Commission was looking at its own conservation lands,
Right.
and then and I don't know, did they talk about it making connections to, say, the rail trail or other parts of town? And
I expect that would be part of it, yeah, about like looking beyond even just their properties.
but when I think of I think you're thinking of a bicycle and pedestrian
Ped bike master plan, yeah.
That's more on looking in streets and how to get bike lanes and sharrows and that sort of thing, more so than looking at a lot of the Conservation Commission lands. There are trails that shouldn't be where they are based on
Right.
wetlands or species or that sort of thing. So they wanted to look at, where do we evaluate each conservation land, what are the trails on those lands, how do we make improvements to make them more accessible and better access, and then, how do we connect them? So,
I've seen a number of communities use a ped bike master plan to accomplish trails goals. I think the landscape has shifted significantly, particularly out of the pandemic, but it's, from the Mass DOT point of view, it's shifted significantly to trail use as for active transportation, the way you would look at a sidewalk or a bike lane. But again, there's just more for me to learn. That's not weighing in one way or the other, looking just to understand more.
There's actually a circulation section too when it comes to a regular master plan, a planning board master plan too. I believe has a circulation component as well. I mean, there's a lot of these kinds of, inevitably, I know that's what the impetus for visioning future Holliston is to sort of try to get away from creating a whole bunch of documents that don't talk to each other and trying to think about how do we get all these documents to sort of be under the same umbrella to sort of accomplish the same goals. And I think probably I put on that hat a little bit too much, and I think a little bit too much about like, hey, can we leverage this to do other things? But at the same time, I'm also trying to find those opportunities. If we can, use this to do a little bit more, we might be able to find ways to solve other problems and look in other spaces. But I think it's a good conversation to have, and we need to talk a little bit more about getting people out of their cars and going places.
Well, certainly the Broad Hill Audubon property really drives home the need for a Trails Master Plan. We've got tremendous opportunity here in Holliston, and I mentioned Broad Hill because any connection to Broad Hill is significant benefit to Holliston. There's a lot of trail network that could connect to the Broad Hill
Yeah,
property.
there was
so.
actually a study done by MAPC
Mhm.
looking at that to make the connection from the 8 Arch Bridge
Yes.
over
Oh, yeah, I
by
remember
the
that,
schools and over to Broad Hill, so,
Mhm. Mhm.
and up to the Ashland State Park.
Any other thoughts about this? I don't think we need a vote or anything.
No
I think we're
vote,
just
I
kind of,
think-
I think,
yeah, we should make
it
sure
makes
you guys
sense,
were
and just making sure
cool
from a
with
policy
this.
perspective
Yep.
that, we're kind of, you're kind of putting your eyes on, or somebody is putting their eyes on all the grants just to sort of make sure that we're not seeing these overlaps. It sounds like it is happening, but just to make sure that it does happen in other spaces that, somebody might just, in good faith, trying to do the right thing, and then all of a sudden, Holliston doesn't need 3 applications for the same grant.
Right.
So, any other last thoughts, comments here? So, Robert, always good to see you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
One thing, if you do go forward with the 1750 Washington Street drainage things, I do need a landowner certification or authorization, and that typically has come from the select board that they would sign a letter.
Sure.
So in that draft document I sent to you, there's a letter that you can look at and authorize and sign. But it
Okay.
basically tells the DCR that the landowner, in this case the town, is authorizing the work to be done on its property. And so that
Yeah, and I think as part of the grant process, I think we would certainly, and if it's coming up that soon, if we need to put it on the next agenda, that we need to sign it or something
Yep.
like that, anytime.
Yeah,
We're
I
happy to-
provided a draft of that letter
Okay.
in that package that I sent,
Okay.
so I do have the draft of the.
Yeah, okay. And I think we're, absolutely in favor of signing it. If it needs to be all 3 of us, me, Frank.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I'm not that familiar with the town manager and role and that sort of thing, but
Yeah.
in the past, it's always been signed by the select board.
Yeah, and we're happy. I think that'd be fine. I think we'll sign it to make sure that.
Or authorized by the select board, voted on by
Yeah.
the select board, signed by the.
If you need a vote, we can do a vote right now.
I was going to say we can move to authorize Frank.
Yeah, we can.
Deposit.
I think we
There you
could do that. And you can come back to us if you need us to sign it.
Sure.
In verification. But yeah, why don't we have a motion to authorize Frank to sign on behalf of the select board?
Sounds fair.
But if you need us to sign it, we can.
Okay.
Move to authorize Frank Gervasio, town manager, the town of Holliston, to sign an upcoming Mass Trails grant application on behalf of the select board.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 There you go.
Cool.
Thanks.
Great, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thanks, Robert.
Moving on to.
Put your hand out right here if you don't mind. Okay. All right.
Okay, so moving on to the DPW Building Committee. So we have kind of a draft charge that we've sort of been be able to look at and think about. I think there needs to be some kind of a group that's sort of looking at the day-to-day workings and sort of thinking about what's going on here, rather than the select board. We don't meet as frequently, and frankly, but I don't think we really necessarily need to be involved in the day-to-day decision-making or thought processes of a DPW building committee. So having a commission, with our facilities director, with the appropriate stakeholders within, for this particular exercise, I think would be beneficial. I do think one thing I was just thinking about I know I wanted to put it on this particular agenda, is that I have had a couple people, residents, reach out to me with some comments and things like that, and I kind of almost want to sort of say, like, could we maybe like take a look at it, have a discussion about it this evening, and then sort of like leave it out to the public, say, hey, any feedback, any comments? We might not get too many, and I have the two people who have commented to me, I can reach out to them specifically and say, hey, what do you guys think?
On the charge for the.
Yeah,
okay.
just to sort of see if like anybody, like they had very specific like building experience in other municipalities, and they were like, hey, I had some suggestions. Just thinking about that, because there's with the way it's written at this point is to have some resident input in investment in it. It might be an idea to just sort of like see how, if anybody gives a little bit of feedback about sort of like what we're talking about here. I think one thing that I had sort of a comment about here was sort of a question, is that should it be a committee or a working group? Is it something, a committee sort of implies like an open meeting, agendas and things like that. Is that something we really want to get into, having those kinds of discussions in an open session, or should we be having a little bit more of a layer, and then the open meetings where there's more, they're not having the particular design and engineering discussions in a public way, because some of those things might not necessarily be appropriate for a public setting. But I'm just curious for thoughts, feedback, and if James wants to come up and chat with us, he can. You don't have to. If you want to come up, you can. Please.
Whatever you want, James.
Because I think this is kind of your wheelhouse here. So just curious, we have James Keese, our facilities director. If you had any comments or thoughts about the charge that was sort of put out there, and what your take is on that, and then my comment about a committee versus a working group. If you had any comments or thoughts.
Sure. So introduce myself, James Keese, facility director. Frank and I, he had sent that document out, made some comments on it. I think in general it's a good idea to have various stakeholders involved in this process. Currently, we have a bi-monthly meeing with the engineering group.
Twice a month.
Yeah, twice a month.
Okay, just make sure.
Bi-weekly, bi-monthly. I never really fully understood that. But certainly Robert Walker is in that meeting as the Deputy Director of the DPW, Sean Reese, if he's available, as the Director of DPW, myself, Frank Gervasio, are in these meetings. And we're getting down to sort of minutia level details, like, okay, you know what, maybe the break room should be over here because the flow and that type of thing. I wouldn't say that's warranted discussion at the committee level. I think that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but I think there's certainly value to having, engineering input and thoughts about those kinds of things. But yeah, you can sort of say, this is what we came up with versus that kind of level of conversation.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at. That I think there is value to have outside expertise or resident input that has this type of experience to review, hey, this is where we're at. Right. It's sort of like a check. Yeah. As opposed to involved in the sort of daily or bi-monthly conversations on the details of the facility.
And it seems similar to, didn't you, for the Woodland Street project, wasn't there some kind of a similar kind of a body that kind of came together? Didn't necessarily have outside input, but didn't you guys have sort of something similar for that project?
Not with Woodland Street. Woodland Street, we had very strong engineer, PAR Corporation.
Yeah.
This is Weston and Sampson with the DPW, but with PAR Corp. Was very, very strong in managing the process for us. We also had input from the DPW team as well, and myself, and that worked well. This is something that's 10x in terms of cost,
right?
And so I do feel that we have that there would be benefit by having, and I don't want to call it a check, but just sort of a review or a validation before we get to the point of ultimately town meeting,
right?
Where this is going to be presented to the public. So
but
maybe
at least coming to us.
At
least before it comes to us, you've sort of already vetted it and sort of thought through some of the engineering decisions and thought processes.
Yeah.
So.
that would be my recommendation. So to
Yeah.
answer your question, not a full building committee that we may have for,
Yeah.
like a high school or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's statute. By statute, we have to have that.
Right,
Versus
correct.
This is just like us talking like, hey, we are out of our scope to really be able to handle the details that you're working on for this project.
So maybe, I don't know, would you call it not a peer review, but sort of a review?
We call it like kind of a
group.
working group, something
Or-
kind of like
yeah.
that, just so that way there's not necessarily, you guys can meet as you need to, and then, give updates to us, but it's not like, voting, you're not taking minutes, those kinds of things, just to make sure that there's, I just have concerns about, like, getting into some of those details, because I don't necessarily think that it's appropriate for a committee having those kinds of meetings to talk about flow through for a break room is
Right.
really beyond scope. And then you're making it, you're thinking about something, Gina.
It's okay. No,
I want to hear it.
But I think
Guilty as charged.
sort of these milestone points throughout the project, right? So
Yeah.
we're coming up to spring town meeting where there's
Yeah.
going to be a request and whatnot. So let's have this
Yeah.
review ahead of that time.
Right.
And then, there's going to be sort of the, selection of the contractor. And then maybe
Right.
that group can, during the construction phase,
Being,
come and take a look.
like an owner's
and-
manager.
yeah,
like
It's like a technical advisory.
yeah, some
Yeah.
kind of a group that can
something
kind of
will come up. They always do. in a big
and those
project
kinds of
like this,
decisions,
so.
like you need to make some decisions in real time, and thinking about those and having that expertise and available is good.
What was the term that Weston and Sampson used when we were in our last public forum? They made a commitment to the public body that was there, to the board as well, that they were going to, it was basically keep the costs as low as possible, but they used a term.
Value engineering.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So here's my question. I'm actually in favor of an appointed committee, because I think that that's where you get the accountability and the transparency when you're expending taxpayer dollars of this size. The working group accomplishes a very good effort, and I see the benefits, no doubt. I think that if we're looking to maintain public trust and we're looking to demonstrate transparency in the process, which I think we have been asked for repeatedly by residents, by taxpayers, by voters, that we demonstrate those things. I think that an appointed committee that is held to open meeting law is a tremendously important piece. But here's an example of how would this decision process go, working group versus committee. So the value engineering is underway. There's a decision that this board needs to make. Are we going to go 10x, 5x? Are we going to put it at a $35, $40, $55, $60 million project? We will be given that decision to make as a board. We know we're not at the end. In fact, we're at the beginning of what we're bringing to town meeting in terms of debt and the cost of this project. Having a recommendation from a standing committee goes a long way for us to say that we're making a decision, we're making a recommendation to town meeting that people can have trust and that there's some accountability behind it. If it's a working group, it's not that it's not there, I just don't see it as strong, if that makes sense. So if a working group has made a recommendation, we have done that in the past too. We did that with the Norfolk Central Street and Goulding Street sidewalk and water main and road surface debt exclusion decision. If you were on the board at the time. We had a working group between the Finance Committee and the Select Board, and that working group put forward a recommendation. So we've seen that work. But I just wonder if when the time comes for this board to bring to town meeting a vote on the debt that we're going to acquire for the project, if having a working group is enough. If we're looking for the highest level of accountability and transparency and public trust. I don't have a concern that we aren't going to go through a process one way or the other. But that's my touch point, is how does that look? Working groups making a recommendation to the select board's voting on what to bring to town meeting, or a committee that's following open meeting law is making a recommendation to the select board and we're bringing that to town meeting.
Question: how might the difference between those two change what you would recommend in terms of the charge for that group, like the confines and scope of what you'd want them to do?
Scope, not so much at all.
Okay.
But the appointment
Okay.
and the open meeting law component go for me, they don't go with the working group. A working group isn't appointed, and they aren't required
Well, they
to
can be
follow open-
appointed. We could certainly appoint a working group. My concern here is, I think they could function in a similar fashion. I think my concern here is that I don't necessarily think engineering decisions should be subject to open meeting law. Because I just think that.
I agree with you. The
I
project
think that-
management should
I
not
think
be
because and I see
tied
this
to
group
that.
as sort
Agreed.
of doing that, and I want them to be able to do that. And I mean, I've heard some comments previously where people were getting into the weeds about the size of rooms and things
Agreed.
like that from the
Agreed.
resident perspective. And I'm not trying to dismiss those concerns, but I don't want to sidetrack the ability of this group to be able to make a reasonable recommendation because we're getting public input too early in the process. I'd like them to be able to give us an engineering perspective that's sort of impartial, and then when they give it to us, we can ask for the public input at that point and create that transparency. That's kind of the way I was envisioning that.
Okay. I don't think I answered Damon's question. Can I just pose another scenario? There are timelines for project milestones. Is the accountability held, so the benefit of a building committee here would be that the building committee is tracking those and the project manager is accountable to the building committee. And if the building committee has a concern, they're bringing that to the select board. We're having a conversation. Where does that go if it's a working group?
We could go to to me, it would go the same way. I think the difference is the open meeting law difference. To me, that's the principal
That's the big
difference here.
difference.
I think how we make the charge could function identically. It's just the question is whether or not they're putting it. I have to put an agenda. They have to go through the clerk. They have to put it for 2 days ahead. And sometimes I think some of these decisions need to be made quickly, and I'd love them to be able to have the flexibility to make those decisions without having to be subject to open meeting law to function in that capacity.
I'm just going to pull up the charge, just to look at it.
That's my
Because that was your
concern there
question.
is that, like, hey, we got to talk on Friday. It's Thursday. Well, we can't because we're on.
No, I
committee.
understand.
I'm going to layer another question. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
to interject, the challenge with this particular project, especially with the deadline that's looming in the spring for
Yeah.
town meeting, is timing, right?
Right.
And so, we are making decisions and these bi-monthly meetings
Yeah.
that are impacting the project. There is a project manager, albeit employed through Weston and Sampson,
Right.
who is keeping everything in terms of timeline and schedule,
Yeah.
because we needed a basically a number.
Right.
Come, what was the date?
It's like
It was
April 15th or
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
It's
we
like
gave them a
it's
date,
35
and so
days
everything is
before
backed
town meeting.
off of that.
Right.
And so, and we need an accurate number.
Yeah.
And that number,
As close as we can get.
as
yeah.
close as we can get, the value engineering and all that will come.
Right.
But we need to start at least with a number, and
Right.
obviously that's the high.
Right.
And work our way down during the, construction and
Yeah.
and bidding process.
And I mean, and the point to the charge is we can change the charge. We can have it be, function materially similarly. We can say they meet with us, every month, or give a report.
publish
or
minutes.
Well, they can
Yeah.
they can do whatever things like that. I have concerns about making it an open meeting.
Not to go too far afield here, the ARPA committee that we had, that
a working group.
reviewed, was that a working group? Because you
That
posted.
is the finance committee. They posted out of the feelings of transparency, but in order to have the finance committee on there, we had to make it a working group.
And that wouldn't be the case here, but it,
And I mean, I'm not saying we can finalize this decision next time. I mean, to James' point, time is ticking, so we do want to kind of get things. They're doing a lot of these things, and if we want to get some of those other people, we want to get them involved sooner, so that way
Right.
they can get up to speed and be part of that process. Especially if we're trying to get ready for basically having something in early April
Right.
to be able to discuss, to be able to put on the ballot.
I'm not on my phone. I'm
Yeah, she's
looking at
Without
looking at
funny,
the charge here, because my
She's on
computer
Facebook,
died.
yeah.
That's right. I was gonna say,
I look
putting bets on the
incredibly
games.
rude, I'm sorry. Okay. When I first read this charge, I thought what I was looking for was that piece about accountability and transparency. And I didn't necessarily see it written specifically, but
We can bake it in.
even less so if we're not going to have public meetings. So I don't know that I have answers. You're not looking for a vote tonight.
I don't
either.
think we have a vote tonight.
Yeah.
I think we have to have an answer on the 26th. I mean, we need to be done. I mean, time's a ticking, and I can reach out to the people who've reached out to me to sort of see if they want to, what their thoughts are here. There are a couple of residents that have come forward to me who have who've had experiences in other places with similar kinds
But
of things. Just to sort of
those individuals could put their names forward for
and that's part of what I
committee.
wanted to ask them, is to sort of say like, hey, what do you think about this, and would you put your name into the
To be
list?
honest with you.
That's part of what I wanted to ask you.
I would like to avoid the project management piece of a committee. I think that would slow down and make it cumbersome and put hurdles in place where we don't need them, and it will not help the process. I would like to think that there's a charge for a working group or a committee that avoids that. I would like to see that there is some more accountability to a public process, more tied to a public process that has that transparency piece there.
I think that could be tied in there, that there's some kind of reporting, there's some kind of, coming to this board and making a presentation once a month, something like that. We can certainly bake it into it to give that level of transparency without having it necessarily be meeting minutes and agendas. I think I'm just concerned about that being overly cumbersome for the charge of the work.
My concern with that would simply be what we went through last year with I didn't know this decision was being made. So
We're going to get that no matter what, because
Right.
no matter how much we try to get the decision out there, we're going to always get people who are going to say, I didn't know.
Well, I think the decision was primarily location-driven. And, whether the building and what the inside of the building looks out, and what's the layout, and, I mean,
Yeah.
they're big, I'm guessing
right.
the residents' biggest concerns can be the cost,
Yeah.
right? Have we looked at every possible way
To
make this
to the
the
cost.
most
Yes.
economical but functional space?
Right. And I think, and that would be part of the charge, is to make sure that as we go through these processes, what is the thinking here, and how does it impact cost?
was the 8 Arch Bridge Committee, was that a committee or a working group? Do you remember
I
that?
believe it was a committee. I think it was a committee.
And the Woodland Street scenario example, that was a state-driven process, and that was state funding. So I'm not sure that's, for me, that doesn't resonate as a good, like a direct comparison.
Well, I
to
just
what we're talking about
what I
here.
meant, I just like James and I had talked about. He'd said like, we meet with the
Yep.
the construction company. We're talking about some of these things and making these decisions. I was just thinking about it from just sort of a process standpoint, not necessarily source of it, just from his perspective, because he's more in the details in these things, and making sure that I know. You're the guy, you're the facilities director. How does this support you in the job that you're trying to do without putting undue burden on your shoulders to try to make decisions that are, maybe reasonable for you to make, but you've got a lot of other things on your plate, and I don't want this is a lot.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of it is driven by having a strong engineering firm, supporting the town in this. And just something that popped in my head, this is purely a suggestion.
Yep.
We talk about the forums, we talk about engaging the community.
Yeah.
It may be beneficial to have another forum, show the plans, show the layout of the site. This is what we're thinking.
Yeah.
This is the location of the various structures within the building. But within time, that maybe some tweaks could be made
Right.
Prior to town meeting.
Yeah.
And so
And I think that could be an opportunity. Yeah.
mid-March,
Yeah.
maybe we could talk to Weston and Sampson about, what, we want to have another public forum.
Yeah.
Okay, here's
the
the
plans.
proposed plans,
Yeah.
right here. And if there are any significant concerns,
Get with them
community,
right forward.
bring them up now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't think that's
might be
an
an option.
unreasonable. I think that's a reasonable thought process, regardless of how we put this group together.
And I think this conversation, is well timed because, excuse me, sorry. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but at the next meeting, I think we've talked internally, and I know Ben, you and I have talked about having Weston and Sampson at our next select board meeting on the 26th. Just given where things stand in terms of the internal conversations that we've been having with Weston and Sampson, I think we'll be in a pretty good spot to not present by any means a finished product, but certainly something more baked than what we were looking at in, say, I don't know, September or October of 2025.
We've made progress.
Right, absolutely.
Things like that.
There's been a lot of thought that's at this table, and in the field, I should say, that's gone into the actual design. I'd say we're still sort of in like the blocks are still kind of moving around.
Yeah.
But it's a much more thoughtful movement of blocks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we've looked at probably a dozen, probably various layouts
Yeah.
of the structure, and have
Yeah.
narrowed it down to a couple possibilities. Combining with Central Street, just because of the constraint of the size of the site, off storage over at Central Street. We have a fire station there that
Yeah.
needs to be contended with. Those kinds of things.
I would, as you work on something to bring back to the board, because there'll be a vote at our next meeting, okay, I would just point to the third bullet as being, for me, the drill down point, and I think it can be as simple as this third bullet, which is providing, oh, that's you working, I was like, something's happening on my phone.
Oh, it's me. Sorry, I'm highlighting it. As you
The providing advice recommendations to the select board throughout the process in response to significant milestones, change orders, and cost implications. That's really
Yeah.
the piece that I'm looking
Yeah,
for.
and I
The
think-
rest of it, I don't know that we need to have the committee or even a working group getting into the details. I think we have good project management skills
Yeah.
and professional expertise,
Yeah.
subject matter expertise. But it's that third bullet,
And,
I think, where
you
we
know,
need
being
the
able to make
greatest
those
accountability.
recommendations to us, to be able to have some, experts within our scope. I mean, I rely heavily on James for these kinds of things, but being able to give him some more horsepower to be able to,
Yeah,
to
no,
do these
absolutely.
kinds of
I
things
think
would be good.
Some additional
Yeah,
technical
and we can even make that
expertise.
even a little bit more specific too in that. So think about it and sort of we bring something forward on the 26th and make sure we can vote on it. And I'll reach out to the people who've reached out to me to sort of see what their thoughts are on the charge and if they want to put their hats in the ring to be part of it with the experiences that they've had. So. Yeah, last thoughts here before we.
If you're appointed, you put your hand up and you go through a formal swearing in with the clerk to be an appointed member of anything.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably want to have. We can do
Which has any resident wanting to be a part of this process accountable to
Sure.
the voters. And
Well,
I
they'll be
like that
accountable to
about.
us, not necessarily the voters, because they're not voting on it. Voters aren't going to vote on it.
Well, during the swearing in, you whatever we say, we should all
It's
remember
like the
this.
law bylaws of the town of Holliston.
Yes, and that's a really important thing when you're
Ethics.
talking about tens of millions of dollars of, of a project. So I like that too, and for me, the working group doesn't get it, but I'm going to drop it for now. We'll look at a revised draft, and I'll be ready on the 26th.
I wouldn't drop it. I join you in wanting that accountability, so it's.
I want accountability too. I just don't. I want them to be able to do their work without
Yep,
having
agreed.
without having it to be drawn down by constraints that might preclude them from being successful.
Accountability plus flexibility.
That's it.
Yep.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk it through.
Of course, of course.
Right.
James,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, James.
All right.
Thanks, James.
Okay. Wonderful. Moving on. We are on to public comment. Everyone in the room. Does anyone in the room have public comment?
Quiet.
Down.
Too many voices.
Yes.
Too many voices.
There is no one here for public comment. Anyone on the Zoom would like to make public comment this evening? You can raise your hand using the reaction button on Zoom. And if you miss this opportunity, you can always email the town manager's office. You can email Donna Muzzy or the town manager with your public comments, and we can read them into the record at a later meeting. All right. It's 8:45. It's pretty late, so I'm sure people have left anyway if they wanted to have something. All right, moving on to warrants.
Okay, we have signed 3 warrants since your last meeting. Technically, we signed 3. There was one that was revised. So the real warrant that we signed on December the 29th, 2025 was for $1,855,337.71. And the second warrant, the first one of 2026, was for $553,024.30. And since your last meeting, we also received a $400 donation from the Holliston Superette for the Center Nutrition Fund. So thanks very much to the team over there.
They're always doing that every few months. It's pretty awesome. Great. Thank you very much, Frank, for that. Select board member updates. Tina, do you have any updates for us?
2 things real quick. Attended the first night event, the first night walk on the rail trail. It was phenomenal. Also was home in Holliston for Christmas and for New Year's, which is the first in a number of years. But I bring that up because the day after Christmas was a snowstorm. New Year's Day was a snowstorm. And first night, there was ice all over the trail. So I'm bringing this up because I would really like to sincerely thank our DPW. They were out the day after Christmas. They were out on December 31st preparing the rail trail with the foresight to put sand down, gravel down, so people could walk safely. I think that saved the event. So thank you to our DPW. And then they were out New Year's Day as well. So, certain careers, jobs have you working the holidays. I understand that. But these are unsung heroes for the impact that they have on our lives. So I just wanted to recognize the DPW and thank them for exceptional service to the residents of Holliston over the holidays. It was really quite remarkable. I also wanted to share that Frank and I have had a conversation that there's a draft out there on some e-bike policy language, and I think that it is very timely. Today was our first ice-free day, I think, in a number of days. It's also after the holidays. And what we've been anticipating, I think, has come to be that there are a number of e-bikes, e-scooters that we're going to see on the roadways in Holliston following the holidays. And I ran into one today. So there's a huge education component around e-bike safety. And I look forward to conversations with our police, the schools, and others to roll some things out here in Holliston to protect our trails and our users. Yeah.
Anticipate that being something that this board would take up?
Yeah, because it would be
Policy
through the
something.
traffic rules and orders.
Got it.
There'd be a number of components to that, and also some direction from this board for police, particularly in terms of education. Not so much enforcement, but maybe some enforcement too.
Starting with the education.
Yeah, and really look to have some collaborative conversations with the schools,
Yeah.
how they can partner with us. Yeah.
Question about that. As far as there's a lot of definition problems
Yes,
municipally on
yes.
like e-bike versus moped versus
Yes.
e-pad, et cetera, et cetera. Are we using anything off the shelf, or are we going to try to define it ourselves?
So
for
we'll
clarity?
have MTC. They'll have to review the language to make sure we're not in conflict with state law. But you're right, state law is vague. I
Very
think
vague.
just to set the table here in a really loose way, it would be that if it does not have operable pedals, it does not belong on the rail trail.
Okay.
If you are on the rail trail, you are adhering to a speed limit that's safe for others, and that parents and those riding e-bikes, e-scooters, e-motos, whatever it is, you are not on a sidewalk. That is absolutely against state law. There is no benefit in my mind to Holliston defining the Class 1, the Class 2, the Class 3, an e-scooter versus an e-moto versus an e-moped. There's really no benefit in us doing it because our goal is safety, and safety is accomplished through adhering to speed limits, staying away from vulnerable users on sidewalks and rail trails, and wearing helmets and having lights on. Those are the sorts of things that enhance safety, and that's all within the law. So I don't see any policy conversation going in the direction of defining, because it's not clear in the state legislature.
I'm excited to read that. I think the problem is that there are classes of these vehicles that are slow enough that you would definitely not want them on a road versus ones that are, and there's a whole theory there that I think is probably beyond what we're trying to address, but
Well, sure.
Yeah.
And if a parent chooses to purchase one of those devices for their child, that's a decision that we don't have any control over.
Right.
But the least we can do is educate and inform, so folks know what decisions they're making. Because there's a lot of misleading marketing out there as well, and there are many avenues by which you can address this. But education first. But there are some updates to our traffic rules and orders, and there's some coordination with, again, schools and police. And look forward to getting MTC's. This is our town council's feedback, as well as police, our SROs, and the schools, and some others get their feedback.
I'm excited for this. I'm self-identifying as a parent who has purchased an electric scooter for one of his children, and we've been waiting off to give it to him and be like, we need to talk about where it's appropriate to use, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to that.
As a parent, I'm going to tell you this. Number one, go on social media and learn how you can modify. The free downloadable app that you can use to override every single safety setting on that e-scooter. And your kid can do it like that.
I have chosen the one that does not have an app interface. We'll talk.
There are other ways that
Yes.
you can. Social media is very helpful for the dark side of all of this.
You don't say.
Yeah. The conversation at our family table was, don't you want to put in traffic rules and orders the social media sites where you can go to learn how to do this? I think that's beyond our scope. I don't think we can do that because
We're not
it's
gonna do
ever
that.
changing. No.
That will be us.
No.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your leadership on that, too.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. David?
I don't think anything functional. I do have an interesting tidbit, some research I've been doing about the town that I'm happy to share.
Sure.
I'll give you the less than 5 minutes version. So what if I told you that in 1773, Holliston changed the course of United States history? I think I've mentioned it to a few before. In 1773, there were 4 African-American gentlemen who had the very first abolition petition that was sent to Governor Hutchins 3 years before the Declaration of Independence, before the colonial rebellions really began. And in it, they petitioned based on the natural right of man that slavery ought to end. And they were so successful that within 6 years, 40 towns in Massachusetts signed laws into effect to abolish slavery, along with patriots also supporting this cause, including Samuel Adams. And one of those individuals was a gentleman named Sambo Friedman, who lived here in Holliston. And of the 4 people who signed, he was probably the only free African-American who had purchased his freedom 20 years before, lived here, was married here, had 4 children here, died here, had no reason to stick out his neck because he was quite prosperous, probably as a local weaver. There was a loom in his accordance when he died. And this little piece of information is not really recorded anywhere or taught anywhere. And it's a remarkable little piece of info that puts Holliston at the epicenter of abolition, and no one talks about it. And I intend to do something about that, and I'm not sure what that is yet.
I like it.
But in other places in this fine country, there are monuments to people such as this, and Holliston has an enormous footprint that no one knows about. We should maybe talk about changing that.
Excellent.
That's all I got.
Where did you learn that information?
Began with the Holliston Historical Society, found a little note about what were called the Freedom Petitioners, saw that there was a guy from Holliston, started to go down National Archives. There's not a ton of info, but the letters exist.
Yeah.
The signatories exist. We know a little bit about the folks who signed. It's unclear if the others were slaves, but the language of the letter indicates that they were, except for Sambo Freeman, who we know was not.
you
So
do
more
it.
to come. Gonna work with Historical Society.
Yeah, I was going to say talk to the people who were here at the beginning, and Joanne.
I will absolutely.
His home or homestead, is it still in existence today?
I do not believe that it is, and it's kind of we think that he may have been very prosperous. He might have had like a couple of things going on, but I believe he is buried about here. I just have to find that. So this is just like the beginning of my research. but
Interesting.
It's very, very cool.
Interesting. Yeah. Tell the librarian about it too.
I don't know, I'm already eyeing places to what could we put up.
Yes.
That'd be really interesting.
I like it.
Yep.
Excellent. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. I got a couple comments here. I mentioned it earlier. Envisioning Future Holliston is meeting tomorrow, and part of the agenda is to talk about a bylaw with process for regularly updating the master plan. There is consideration and maybe a potential push for Envisioning Future Holliston to sponsor that article. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know how people are going to feel about that, but I just kind of wanted to put it out there. And we can certainly have, based on sort of how things go tomorrow, we can figure out, how the language is sort of disseminated to you to sort of review and have your eyes on and things like that. I want to sort of let that play out a little bit first and see what the next steps are before we get involved in it. It might be further down the line. It might go to the planning board first. I want to let sort of things play out a little bit beforehand, but I just kind of want to keep you apprised of that. Second thing is that I was thinking about town meeting, as I always do. I was thinking about inviting the school committee to present something at town meeting for, even just a few minutes. We're talking about a new superintendent. We're talking about an MSBA process, and they are obviously the largest budget in the budget line in the town budget for the omnibus on May. And I think it would be appropriate, and I think it would be a good idea for them to have somebody. I brought it up to the school committee chair, and she seemed open to the idea. I said, it doesn't have to be you, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to throw it out there that this might be, I think it might be a good idea. We have select board, we have finance committee, we have a few minutes from the school committee as well. Given all the things that are changing, I think it'd be a nice opportunity for them to speak to the community. So I just wanted to let you folks know about that. And then the third thing is that the superintendent search is heating up. And I was invited to be part of the review, the resume review committee, the sort of the first stage of it, and that's going to be taking place next weekend. It's not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. So it sounds like the school committee is being very aggressive in their timeline. So they want us to meet Saturday and Sunday, vet the people that are resumes and things like that, do interviews, and then have some names by Monday. It sounds like they really want to push. Yeah, they're moving. They want to move at a pretty breakneck speed to have things going. So I'll be involved in that, and I'll be able to give a little bit more of a recap at the next meeting and such. But just keeping you apprised of that. So. That's all I have. A couple other things, but they're more appropriate for other business. So I'll leave it to that.
Okay.
But I'm all set. Next, we have comments from the town manager. Before you start, I just wanted to mention to people, and I told the school committee about this as well, just to make sure that they didn't go, wait, what's going on here? I asked for us to just make sure we have a line for the any updates from the MSBA. There might not be, but just, sometimes things happen so quickly. I just wanted to make sure. I just said, hey, let's just have something for a while, until the school building committee is getting their feet off the ground and things like that, that we have something that if there's any updates, we have a place on our agenda for that. Frank may have some, he may not. It's not anything in particular. I just wanted to make sure that space was there. Similarly, in a couple weeks, we'll have town meeting, budget will be basically on every one of our agendas, even if there's no particular updates. I like having it there so that way we have a little bit of space if we need to make comments or have a little bit of a discussion, we have the opportunity to do so. So, Frank?
No MSBA updates tonight,
okay,
but
that's fine.
A few other things to cover. I will try to be brief. So this is our first meeting, as I'm about to read off a bunch of statistics to you that hopefully you'll find interesting, but it's good stuff, I promise. So this is our first meeting of calendar year 2026, so Happy New Year to all. And to close out 2025, I wanted to highlight the efforts some of our departments made last year. So the fire and ambulance departments responded to 2,041 calls for service, a 12% increase compared to 2024. The police department responded to 18,176 calls for service. Parks and Recreation hosted 481 campers and camp counselors in training, had 526 beach stickers sold, and registered 1,479 non-camp program attendees. The center served 2,310 meals, provided 3,783 van rides to its 1,195 active members. The Holliston Library had 197,187 total items checked out, which I actually found this part most interesting, including over 77,000 children's books. So of their 197,000, 77 were children's books. Very interesting.
My daughter's about half of those. They're there all the time.
And 8,225 library patrons attended 1,079 programs. Youth and Family Services served 117 families and dispersed over $18,000 in funding assistance via the Community Action Fund. And actually, to go back to Parks and Rec, they said over 1,000 freeze pops were consumed, which I found fascinating. Speaking of town departments, I want to offer my sincere appreciation to Melanie Hamblin, who recently left us here in Holliston for an exciting new adventure. Melanie certainly made her mark here as Economic Development Coordinator. She will be very sorely missed. Another bit of recognition for Kevin Rudden, our assessor. He's been named to the International Association of Assessing Officers to a 5-member marijuana valuation task force, which will work on guidance for assessors across the country on assessing property values for both retail and cultivation operations. So we have one guy going to the CCC. Now we have this thing. Yeah.
Holliston making its mark.
Yeah. So just wanted to mention that. But in all seriousness, kudos to Kevin. It's a good professional accomplishment. An update on our the development of our town climate action plan. The draft list of actions is now available for the public to review. These 24 actions will set specific, achievable goals for our town's fight against climate change. We need residents' input to make them effective. You can find the full list on the town website on the Sustainability Department webpage. You can also find the online survey to provide feedback there as well. You can also fill out the survey at Town Hall, the Center, or the library. An official mailer with the survey will actually go out to each resident and business owner in the coming weeks in your mailbox. So please contact the Sustainability Department if you have any feedback or questions on that. I think we also put a copy of the survey. You can fill it out online too, but we put a copy of that in your packets as well. A couple of updates from the town clerk. The annual census has been mailed out. Please respond promptly. Dog licenses for 2026 are now due, so please have your applications in by April 30th to avoid the $50 late fee. And lastly, nomination papers for town offices will be available on February 2nd, 2026. I believe the town clerk also recently posted the full list of positions that are up for election in 2026 as well, so feel free to review that. A few billing things to discuss. Property tax bills have hit mailboxes, so please feel free to contact the assessor's office at 508-429-0604 with any questions. Quarterly water bills will be mailed out next week, and our fiscal year 27 water rate hearing will be held at the February 9th Select Board meeting. A reminder that the Marshall Street Recycling Center is open on Sundays through January 25th, 2026. And new 2026-2027 decals to access the recycling center are now available at the treasurer's office. Speaking of trash and recycling will be delayed one day starting this upcoming Monday, January 19th for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Town offices will also be closed that day. That is the town manager update for January 12th. The select board meets next on January the 26th.
Great. Any questions for the town manager?
Just next at the 26th will be preliminary budget information. Is that what you were planning?
Ideally, yes, along with a DPW update. So it would be a pretty fun one just to.
Yeah, I got a few things to add to that, but we'll get to that. It's all the business.
Yep.
Yes. Anything new?
No, it's okay.
Board business.
Would you like me to make a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there
Are
anything?
people comfortable moving forward?
Most comfortable.
Okay, let's do it.
So I'll start with the thanks to Jessica Ullman for
Yes.
volunteering for the Policy Advisory Committee and move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded.
I will, before I take a vote, just a quick question. The PAC term ends June 30th this year?
Yes, I believe they are all.
They're all like the one-year
appointments.
terms? Okay,
Yep.
so I would just add that the appointment for Jessica Ullman will be through June 30th, 2026.
Okay, so move to approve the consent agenda as amended to as presented here this evening.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
All right, that's all set. Other business? Tina, any other business?
Really quick, not to make think I said it as a light comment, but I actually mean it a little heavier than that. The Programmatic Stabilization Fund as a potential funding source for the plaque program, if it came to that. Arts and culture is absolutely an area of local government, and the dollars, in my mind, from a Programmatic Stabilization Fund should be applied to all areas of government in terms of initiatives that would pay back the fund, which this would. So I would not want there to be a hurdle for the Historical Commission in pursuing a plaque program that was financial, where we have the Programmatic Stabilization Fund as seed money. So just wanted to raise that up as a very good use of those stabilization funds for a very significant and important area of local government.
Okay.
Okay, nothing further on my end.
Okay, I got a couple things. The first thing is that I put together a town manager evaluation form, and I got it approved through Labor Council.
Excellent.
And Frank has also had eyes on it, and he's comfortable with it. So I'm going to send it to you, get it to you all tomorrow. And what we've done in the past, just to sort of reiterate, is get it to the town clerk. She will collect it. I'd ask that so you'll get it. Ask to be sent out tomorrow, which is the 13th. I'd ask that you get it back to the town clerk by the 26th. So it's about 2 weeks, and then give her a couple of days to turn around to me on the 2nd, February 2nd, and then I will give the formal review from the board to Frank. And that being said, if the two of you want to meet with Frank individually to talk about your reviews, you are certainly welcome to, but that's, up to you. But I will schedule something that week after I get the evaluations back and collected to sit down with Frank to go through it as the chair. Second thing is for the next meeting, we talked a little bit about the schedule for budgets and summit and things like that for the end of February. I want to finalize that. And I really think it's important, especially for most of the smaller budgets, that the Finance Committee is able to participate in some capacity. Honestly, like a lot of those meetings that I've seen, watch them from them, there might be no questions,
Right.
very few questions, and I want to give I want to respect the time of the department heads and being able to present things that if they don't have to give the same presentation multiple times with no feedback whatsoever, it's not a good use of their time. So I want to make sure, I understand probably the bigger ones like, police, fire, EMS, DPW, they're going to want to talk to the Finance Committee individually. There's a lot of complicated things going on, but for a lot of the smaller budgets, I want to make sure that we can do as much as we can to streamline the process so we review it and get an opportunity for the Finance Committee to participate at the summit in some capacity for those budgets. They can certainly listen to the other ones, but maybe not participate for them. But I want to sort of iron out exactly what that looks like so we can set expectations to the department heads and to the Finance Committee. And then the final thing is the town hall update that we've been sending out.
Yep.
I think it's been going pretty well. I don't know what you guys think. I don't need you to talk about it right now, but I do want to start pushing forward to having other boards and committees participating in it. And I'd like to be a little bit more formal in that. So what I'd like to see us doing is drafting a letter from the select board inviting other boards and committees that are duly elected, the ones that report to us. We can tell them this is what's going to happen. You need to. We want you to participate. Please participate. Unless there's a real compelling reason not to. I've honestly, as I review the exports from AI, I've had to do light editing, name here, change here, word here. I think there was one that words became especially salient. I'm like, they're not that important. We can delete that. But that's, I think, about the biggest part. I don't think you've had to do too much. There've been, as you guys go through it, there hasn't been a ton that I've had to really do because these aren't minutes. It's not a transcription. It's just here's what the board did in the meeting and trying to get others to participate and to be part of the process to understand what's going on. So I'd like us to draft a letter to other boards to say, hey, this is available. We'd like you to participate. Here's the process, something like that. So if we could kind of put something together for the 26th to be able to send it out to the other boards and committees. I've certainly talked to some of them, but I'd like to sort of formalize that a little bit more. And we can certainly talk to Chris Mayo about what that looks like and how that would work from his end. I don't want to add administrative burden. That's why we're using AI as this, but finding ways to make sure that we can get more information to the public faster. I think would be beneficial. So
Mr.
I'd like to do
Chair,
that. Yes.
Have you chatted with any of the leadership of the other boards who?
A few.
And have some?
A few, and they've sort of been like, "Yeah, this sounds interesting," and it's just like I wanted to sort of kick it up a notch to sort of make it
Go from
be a little
talking
bit
to doing.
more. Yeah, I want to do a little bit more to it, put a little more teeth to it, so that way we can get more buy-in. Because I think having us on it is nice, but I think if we start getting more boards and committees, there's a few in mind that would be very nice to have on there.
Agree.
That I think people would really start to be able to use it as something that would be helpful to sort of keep up with what's happening in the government. To your point earlier, like, I didn't know this was happening. Well, you can, if you read these, you will be able to see what's happening. And there's not a lot of surprises. So that's all I have for other business. Frank, do you have anything else tonight?
No, that is it for me.
All right.
Fantastic.
All right. I will take a motion to adjourn at 9:11 p.m.
I'll move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Seconded.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you very much, Holliston. We are adjourned. We will see you again on January 26th. Have a warm and happy next couple weeks.